Again, I'm outside the Trump headquarters, so, you know, I don't have any notes or scripts. I'm just winging it off the top of my head. Topic number 2. And again, I apologize for the winging it nature of this video. I usually like to be a lot more scholarly with my video, but I'm doing a Facebook Live, so there's not much I can do. Issue number 2, black population control. I'm sick of it, and I want it to end, and I hope you feel the same way. Now, what do I mean by black population control? Well, what if I were to tell you that there was an organization in the early 20th century that was originally called the American Birth Control League, or I believe the National Birth Control League. I forget what the original name of it was. But what if I told you that there was an organization that was founded by a racist eugenicist who believed in a superior race, very similar to the ideology of Adolf Hitler and those from the Aryan nation, named Margaret Sanger, who actually had a black population control agenda called the Negro Project, that was a very elaborate agenda that was as evil as it was brilliant. I got to give her credit. I mean, if you ever want a manual on how to engage in population control, Margaret Sanger's your go-to gal, because she mastered the wicked craft of population control. Why is it? And again, you can check this out if you go to blackdemographics.com. Blackdemographics.com. That's a great website that gives you lots of information about the black population, about the black community on different issues, whether it's employment issues or population issues, whatever you want to call it. And why is it that black people are only 13% of the population? We've been stuck at 13% for a very long time. And why is that? Population control, the textbook definition of that is basically when you have an orchestrated effort to try to keep the population down at a certain number. You don't want to completely exterminate the population. You don't want to completely make it go extinct, because in the evil mind of this population control person, of this eugenicist, certain populations have a purpose and they need this population to exist, so they can't completely eradicate it. They can't completely exterminate it and bring the numbers all the way down to 0%. So it's not like Sanger wanted to wipe black people off the face of the earth, but she did want to control the black population. And I'll be doing lots more videos that go into her ideology of why she does that. But long story short, guys, the fact is, we've been stuck at 13% for a very long time. And since Roe versus Wade was passed, since 1973, we have lost between 16 to 20 million black Americans. Now, obviously, the total number is 60 million. But since everybody's talking about Black Lives Matter and everybody's focusing on black lives right now, which in my opinion, I feel kind of excludes other lives that also matter. But I'm going to go with the flow. I'm going to go where the traffic's at. And everybody's talking about Black Lives Matter. So let's talk about black lives that matter. Okay. So that's why I'm focusing only on black population and not other demographics. But the fact is, we're stuck at 13% because of abortion. I want you to think about something. 1973 was, how many years ago was that? 50 years ago? 47 years ago? Guys, I want you to think about something. The first generation of babies that have been aborted since Roe versus Wade are old enough to have at least one kid. Think about that. They're old enough to have at least 2 or 3 kids. I mean, your average 47-year-old has 2 or 3 children by now, if not more. So think about this, guys. Yeah, we've lost 20 million babies, black babies, but we've also lost at least another 20 million people. At least. Because let's say that each one of those aborted babies lived long enough to the age of 18, we'll call it, and they each lived long enough to have one child themselves. If you think about it, it's actually doubled the amount of people we've lost. Maybe even triple, if you factor in all the chemical abortions that happen with the birth control pill. But that's another video too. But think about it, guys. 20 million black people have been killed through abortion. They each could have had one kid. So we could argue that 40 million black Americans have been killed since Roe versus Wade. So if you think about it, our population is half what it should be. And I'm not even factoring in black on black violence. Think of all the blacks we've lost at the hands of other blacks. Think of all the blacks we've lost through black on black violence, right? We've lost 300 and some thousand lives to black on black violence in the last 35 years. Okay? Think of how many generations could have come from that we've lost. So guys, we're still at 13% of the population because we're being controlled. We are in the midst of black population control right now. We are. These are some hard facts. I hate saying this stuff. I hate being the messenger, but it's true, guys. And it's a shame that it's going on in 2020 America. We're in 2020. We're not in 1920, which is right around the time Margaret Sanger founded the Birth Control Federation, which later became Planned Parenthood. Okay? We're in 2020, guys. And yet, us black people are still getting the short end of the stick. We are still suffering from the worst form of systemic racism that could be suffered. Think about it, guys. Think of all the different kinds of systemic racism that a person could suffer. Job discrimination, housing discrimination, right? Food discrimination, marriage discrimination, voting discrimination. Think of all the civil liberties. Think of all the civil rights that us black people have been deprived of throughout our pilgrimage here in the United States, starting with slavery. But there's a form of systemic racism, guys, that's worse than all those. And I'm not saying that to minimize as how bad the other ones are. But if you don't have the right to live, it doesn't get any more racist than that. If you're being targeted in the womb just because you're black, think of how racist that is. I mean, if I'm a black guy walking down the street, I live in Oakland County, so the chances of this happening are next to zero. But let's say Oakland County was somehow racist enough to where it's unsafe for me as a black man to walk down the street without the risk of being gunned down because of the color of my skin. Like, oh, look at that black guy. Let's gun him down. So they gun me down. Turn on the news. Bobby Hessley gunned down just for being black, right? Okay. That's systemic racism if that's widespread and if it's baked into the legal system to do that. But at least I have the ability to either shoot back if I'm carrying, to fight back, to run away, to defend myself, or to decide to not go outside if I feel like it's too safe for me to go outside, right? I at least have the ability to defend myself. So yeah, it's messed up that I'm going to get gunned down for the color of my skin, but at least I have somewhat of a fighting chance to survive that attack. Okay? You following me? How much more vulnerable can you be than in your mother's womb? You can't eat for yourself. You can't drink for yourself. You are completely at the mercy of your mother. You're as good as your umbilical cord is. Okay? You're completely at the mercy of your mother that's carrying you. You are completely and utterly defenseless. You have less rights than any other member of society. Think about that. A just and a civilized society is measured on how well they defend its most defenseless. You want to know how just a society is? You want to have a measuring stick for how to gauge how just and how righteous a society is? Look at how they treat the most vulnerable members of their society. Don't look at how they treat the most powerful. Don't look at how they treat the most athletic. Don't look at how they treat the richest. Don't look at how they treat the most talented. Don't look at how they treat the strongest, the prettiest, the quickest, the fastest, the richest, the whitest, the blackest, whatever ist you want to throw on there. Don't look at how they treat those people. Look at how well they treat the most vulnerable and the most defenseless members of that society. And you don't have to be Catholic. You don't have to be Christian or Jewish. You don't even have to be a believer in God to agree with me that a child in the womb is the most defenseless and vulnerable member of any society throughout any time in history. That is a fact, guys. That ain't my opinion. That's a fact. Zuck can't fact check me on that one, because that's a fact. I don't care what the fact checkers say about that. The most vulnerable members of any society is the child in the womb. Now, if that child in the womb happens to be, and I'm going to create a term here because Bobby Hessley's known for coining phrases. If that person happens to be what I call a UOC, let's hashtag that, a uterus of color, right? an embryo of color, I'm sorry, an EOC, an embryo of color. There's a new term I'm going to coin, a new phrase I'm going to coin. So we've already established the fact that a child in the womb is the most defenseless, most vulnerable person of society. Now, if you look at the pure statistics of abortion, the pure numbers, no feelings, no emotions, just straight up facts and numbers and statistics, you add color to that embryo. Now the vulnerability of that embryo of color, of that EOC, has just risen exponentially. Because black embryos are targeted more than any other race of embryos in the United States. Who wants to argue with me on that? Who wants to try to disprove that? That is a fact, guys. Embryos of color are the most vulnerable members of society. They are. I'm not saying that there are not other blacks, that there are not other people of color that are not vulnerable. I'm not saying that. Please keep your words out of my mouth. But what I'm saying is, you gotta go where the bodies are. That's what I tell everybody who says that Black Lives Matter. If Black Lives matter to you, you gotta go where the bodies are. And the fact is that there are mountains of bodies that are being piled up, and there are rivers of black blood that are flowing through the inner city, that are flowing through the abortion clinics that are strategically there, and that are flowing through the streets due to black on black violence. And we need to put a stop to it, guys. And I believe that there's been an evil plan in place for over 100 years now, starting with the Negro Project of Margaret Sanger. That was a very organized black population control campaign that wanted to use abortion and use contraception as a means to keep the black population small. And I believe that there are other systemic racism laws and regulations that were put in place that will also keep us killing each other, and that will also continue to reduce our numbers through black on black violence. For example, the 94 crime bill. That's a huge piece of systemic racism legislation. Huge. And they have destroyed the black community. They have destroyed my people. They really have. So, why control blacks? If the left knows that the majority of people are going to vote Democrat if they're black, and that's a fact, I hope that trend is changing. But the fact is, up until now, since the 1960s, the Democrat has dominated the black vote. Over 90% of blacks vote Democrat. So why would Democrats make an effort to abort their own voter base? Well, again, what did I say at the beginning of the video? The aim of population control is not to exterminate and completely eliminate a population. It's not to get the numbers down to zero. It's to keep the numbers low. Why? Well, think about it, guys. If you think of any society, let's think of slavery, okay? Slaves didn't realize, because we were so oppressed, we were enslaved mentally as well. And because of our mental enslavement back during the times of slavery, we didn't realize that there were so many more of us than there were of them. You guys got to realize there were far more many slaves than there were slave masters. There were. We outnumbered them like crazy. We could have overthrown them. We would have lost a lot of lives, but thank God for the white North that intervened and came to our rescue. But there are far more many slaves than there were masters, right? So the Democrats learned from that. They said, you know what? We can't we need this population as our voter base, but we can't let them grow too numerous, which is very interesting because those were the same words of Pharaoh. If you read Exodus chapter 1, it says that Pharaoh grew afraid because the numbers of the Jews had increased. And Pharaoh literally admitted that because of these Jews, because the Hebrews are becoming so populous, because they're reproducing so much, we have to enslave them because they could overthrow us. They could overthrow our kingdom. The Democrats are modern day pharaohs, guys. They really are. And when I say Democrats, I'm not talking about your average person who steps into the voting booth and votes Democrat. I'm talking about Democrat leadership. I should clarify that. I don't want to alienate people. I don't want you to think that Bobby Hessley thinks that anybody who's a member of the Democrat Party is just this evil person. That's not at all what I'm saying. So I should clarify that. Democrat leadership thinks the way the old pharaohs of old used to think back in the book of Exodus, where they enslave us out of fear. Because if we grow too numerous, they're going to lose their power over us. They're going to lose their control over us. That's a fact. So that's why the Democrats work so hard to keep these abortion laws in place. Because if they can keep these abortion laws in place, if they can keep us at 13%, then they can continue to get our 90% vote every year. But if we can repeal these murderous King Herod abortion laws that slaughter our unborn, we can grow numerous and outnumber our modern day pharaohs. We really could. And if we were to able to grow past 13%, if we can get the black fathers back in the home, if we can get rid of abortion, if we can reduce black on black violence, if we can increase the black literacy rate, if we can reduce the black prison recidivism rate, then we can grow so numerous that hell, we could probably start our own party. We probably could. But the fact is, we are being kept down. We are being population controlled by abortion. So I believe, like the old Chinese proverb says, that the journey of 1,000,000 miles begins with the first step, right? So what's the first step that we can take to reduce this population control, to get Pharaoh out of power that's trying to hold us down? By Pharaoh, I mean modern Democrat leadership. Re-elect Donald Trump. There's step number one. Okay, there's your first step. Let's keep the 45 in office, folks. Let's keep Donald Trump in office. Donald Trump has been the best friend of the black embryo in the history of the presidency. He has stripped Planned Parenthood of Title IX or Title X federal funding, whatever funding that was. And I find it so interesting that Planned Parenthood, which again was an organization that was founded to bring about black population control, I find it so interesting that Planned Parenthood loves to go around saying, oh, we only 3%, that old 3% number. Only 3% of our procedures are abortions. The other 97% are other essential services that women need. You know, we give them condoms, we give them breast exams, we give them their pap smears. We only do a tiny little portion of abortions. Yet, as soon as federal funding is stripped of Planned Parenthood, they go ape wire. Why? Because they know damn well that most of what they exist for is abortion. Let me give you guys an analogy to help you understand that, okay? Let's say that the federal government passed a law. This would never happen. I'm just giving you an example. Let's say Donald Trump issued an executive order prohibiting McDonald's from selling apple slices on their dollar menu. Do you really think that's going to hurt McDonald's? You really think that's going to put McDonald's out of business? Like, oh, Trump said we can't sell apple slices on our dollar menu. Well, I guess we better fold up all our franchises, guys. We're going to go out of business. No, because apple slices is a tiny percentage of their business. In fact, they only have them there just to make you, feel like you have a healthy choice. And not to go off on a tangent, but if I'm trying to eat healthy and I want to eat apples, the last place I'm going to eat apples is at McDonald's. Give me a break. Man, I feel healthy right now. I got some healthy cravings. I think I'm going to go to McDonald's. But anyway. So think of that analogy though, guys. Think about it. If McDonald's couldn't sell apple slices, no big deal. Because apple slices is such a small part of their business. The way Planned Parenthood freaked out a few years ago when Trump defanged them with federal funding, that proves how much of in the abortion business they really are. Because they shouldn't care about that. Just think about that, guys. Remember those facts. So, I'm going long, guys. I'm going to wrap up here. But the fact is, guys, I'm sick and tired of black population control. I want to see an end to it. I want you to help me put an end to it. And the first step that we can take to put an end to it is to re-elect President Donald Trump, the most pro-life president we've ever had in history. And I don't care what people say. It's so funny how there's so many people who walk around with God powers all of a sudden. Everybody's God now that Trump is in office. Everybody seems to be God. What do I mean by that? Well, everybody seems to have this supernatural ability to peek inside this guy's heart who lives on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And somehow they can just read the heart of Donald Trump and look into his heart and say, wow, this guy doesn't care anything about abortion. He's only pandering to the pro-life base. How do you know that? How do you know what's in Donald Trump's heart? How do you know how much he does or does not care about the unborn? You don't know that. You're not God. You can't see this man's heart. Hey, I'll take it. Whether it's sincere or insincere, all I look at are the facts, guys. I'm looking at the laws being passed. I'm looking at the laws that are being repealed. I'm looking at the measures that he has taken to reduce black population control. And I don't care how pure his motives are. It's getting the job done. Would you expect him to be Jesus Christ? Donald Trump is not Jesus Christ. Why does the President of the United States have to be Jesus Christ without sin? I don't get it. I really don't. So anyway, guys, that's my video. I'm glad to be with you. Again, it's hard doing these Facebook Lives. That's why I don't do them very often, because I like to be, I don't know, this is all off the top of my head. I do better, you know, when I've had time to think about things. But this was what was on my heart as I was driving to the Trump headquarters. We are going to do some planning meetings. And I'm going to be out in Troy, Michigan later today to meet with some major Republican organizers to try to get some things done in Detroit here for the Republican Party.